It is my great pleasure now to introduce Stacy Thompson. She's the Deputy Director of Livable Streets Alliance, a nonprofit advocating for biking, walking, and transit to create safe streets and vibrant communities.
I always feel like such a not cool geek when I come to these things because I come from the social sciences and I know nothing about autonomous vehicles. There are no robots in my presentation. And actually, what is the focus of this presentation is pretty simple. We can talk about all of these great modes and all these different ways people are trying to get around, but ultimately, this is what's happening. We're all just trying to get somewhere. We're trying to get to work, we're trying to get to school, we're trying to get to our kids' soccer practice, we're trying to get to a show. It doesn't matter if you're taking a bus or a train or a fancy car or a hoverboard 30 years from now. What remains the same and what was the same 100 years ago, what will be the same at the Olympics if they're here, what will be the same in 2030 is that you've got a city full of people and they're all just trying to get somewhere. If we talk about Boston today, I think that there's a perception that we are at a standstill. How many people have complained about their commute in the last week to someone? Yeah, in the last month? Yeah. Boston tends to be a place where people aren't happy about what's going on with their commute. And I don't think that we're unique. But I would say a couple of interesting things have happened. Since 1987, car volumes in the city have fallen by 31%, and what's more interesting is that car shares have skyrocketed. And when you dig into the data a little bit more, you find that, let's see if I get this statistic right. In 5 years, the number of cars per person has dropped from 59 out of 100 to 49 out of 100, and we're seeing that continue to decrease. Since 2001, the pedestrian flow has increased across the board, and Wendy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 1 in every 3 trips is done by walking. It's still probably the primary way people get around this city. And since 2007, bicycling has more than doubled, and we're actually seeing a 30% increase per year. So this statistic is only going to skyrocket. And of course, since 1964, MBTA ridership is at its highest levels and growing despite the snow and frustration. So regardless of what technology comes or does not come to this city in the next 15 or 20 years, there are clear demographic shifts. And probably the most important one is this population statistic. We are talking about an increase from 550,000 to 600, wow, a lot, right there. You can read the slide. We have a beautiful city. A couple of things, you can't really see it on the side, but I'm gonna scoot through them, is a couple of statistics about people, whether they're walking, driving, taking public transportation by generation. And what I actually found most interesting about these stats is not the differences, but the similarities between generations. There's often a perception that multimodal transportation use is something that young people are doing, but it's not. You see some differences, but not huge differences between generations, and we're all shifting toward wanting to have more opportunities and more variety in our lives when we're trying to get somewhere. So what does this mean if when we're trying to get to 2030? I often say, again, we immediately jump to, let's have bike lanes all over the city, or what's the new cool mode that we're gonna have? But for me, let's just stop talking about that for a second. Let's step back and let's imagine what our city would be if we said, no, our streets are simply vibrant public spaces. Our streets are for personal interaction, they're for physical activity, they're for community and fun. They're not just for cars, they're not just for bikes, they are for people to interact with each other and to get somewhere, and they accommodate everyone. If we start at that premise, then everything that everyone has said here tonight changes. It's not about that mode, it's about getting people somewhere. I think a classic example of this is Commonwealth Avenue. Who here has been on Com Ave? Who's taken the beeline ever? You all survived, congratulations. This is designed for a piece of Commonwealth Ave that was recently unveiled in March. We're pretty excited about this. We worked with folks at Walk Boston, Boston Cyclists Union, to get this design. But what's interesting is it falls pretty flat on the screen, but what you're looking at is a complete street. You're looking at a sidewalk that accommodates a lot of people. It's nice and wide. You have a cycle track that is double protected, so there's a physical barrier, and then parking so that bikes and cars aren't crossing around each other. And then you have the travel lanes. Then you have a nice covered space for the person who is waiting for the train. And you see this on both sides. In addition to that, you have signal priority for the Green Line and the 57 bus. So what this translates to in real life is 100,000 people using that 3/4 of a mile every single day, getting around faster. Imagine a world where instead of every single time a little construction project comes up, we have to fight for 3 feet of sidewalk space or fight for a bike lane. What if in 2030 we simply, this isn't technology, we just said every single street that we redesigned in the city of Boston has to be built like this. We have to think this way. We have to think about people first. It's a simple concept. I know. Don't laugh at me. I'm asking you to imagine this. And what's important here is to think about statistics. So this is just asking someone simply, would you bike next to a car? And you've got a tiny little group of people saying, absolutely no problem. 60% saying, I'm interested but concerned, and then 30% saying, no way, no how. So some simple shifts could really give people more opportunities on our streets, and it's just about rethinking those opportunities. And of course, having opportunities for people who don't want to bike, because 30% is a substantial number of people. Bus rapid transit was brought up recently. I'm curious, someone asked what bus rapid transit is. How many people here are unfamiliar with bus rapid transit? I want to get a feel before I start. Oh, we're great. This is awesome. So there was a study recently done that talked about BRT in the city of Boston, and it suggested that we rethink our bus system. And whether you're a proponent of BRT in Boston or not, I think it's important to really look at the elements of gold standard BRT and think about what makes them great and how we might be able to implement them in the city of Boston. A couple of things like platform level boarding, whether it's for BRT or something else, can really make life better for someone who happens to be in a wheelchair, for people who have strollers. Off-board fare collection, that can make or break your experience on public transportation. How can we start taking elements of something like this and making our city better? And this is an image from the report. I highly recommend folks, this is a 10-minute presentation, but all of this is online. These are 5 corridors. There were 12 corridors identified in this report, but these 5 corridors were sort of picked out as ripe for bus rapid transit in the city of Boston. And I bring this piece up not just because I think we should automatically have BRT as a priority in our transit system, but because this is an interesting intersection with the Olympics. The IOC requires designated bus lanes for athletes and officials, I believe I'm getting that right. And some of those corridors directly align with where we would be moving people from point A to point B. So whether we get the Olympics or not, starting to think about these overlap points is really key, and thinking about how we can pilot new and different ways of using something as simple as a bus in our city. And the last piece that I want to get to is sort of, I think, brings us full circle again to simple ways of getting around. I have been saying we often focus on a public transit system, but let's not forget that we have the vision of Olmsted and Eliot, who really envisioned an active transit system for our city, meaning people who are walking and biking and skateboarding around the city to get around. And it is possible. We're working on something that we're calling the Greenway Links Initiative, which would be taking this active transit system, but really connecting 200 miles of potential greenways across the Metro Boston area. I'm happy to go through some of these images in more detail with all of you. But what if we started thinking about our walking and biking experiences as a full transit system so that it's all interconnected? Again, these are sometimes difficult when you're talking about tiny little pieces. This is what we have currently in our city, right? It doesn't look like a system. It looks like chopped up little green spaces that people usually go to enjoy. But what if they were part of your everyday experience from getting to point A to point B? What I think is interesting, again, is that when you envision it as a system with what Wendy was bringing up earlier, trees, comfort, you are maybe more compelled to walk or bike to get somewhere. It's cheap, it's better for the environment, it's better for the city, more people can do it, it addresses some of our density issues. And again, you know, putting this in the seat of a potential Olympics bid, there is some clear corridor alignment, and there are also clear connectivity between neighborhoods that right now are really difficult to get to and from. So this is all to say that I know I said a lot. Basically, let's just transform our public transit system, all of our walkways, only think in system speak. But I believe that the Boston of the future can be more connected. And I think that whether we have autonomous cars, whether we have amazing technologies, whether we have even just a teeny tiny little piece of what we've talked about today, whether it's ferry transportation or something else, if we fundamentally reframe the conversation and make it about people, then we can have some really great experiences in 2030. I think regardless, we're going to see decreased car ownership, increased car shares. We're going to see significant progress toward a sort of a seamless emerald network of greenways. I think that we can be more visionary and say, what if we just make a commitment to making all of our streets complete? What if we really push transit priority and think about having gold standard BRT, or at least elements of that gold standard BRT in our lives, so that we can get from one place to another and be happy and healthy. And the biggest takeaway is that in 2030, we're all still just going to be trying to get somewhere. And so whoever gets their way and whoever figures out what we're going to be doing in terms of transportation, it's still just going to be a lot of people in a place trying to get from point A to point B, and it's up to all of us to figure out how to do that the best way. So thank you so much.
The question is not just what's the best urban plan. The question is, what are the outcomes that we seek as a result of the planning and design?